Ghostbusters, the board game 2, a sequel to, I guess, Ghostbusters, the board game, which is a game that I did not play incidentally, so I'm not gonna compare in my video for this one. What I know is that I saw pictures of this game online and it looked really fun, really interesting. It looked like a version of Zombicide with a more humorous theme, with a Ghostbusters theme, so I thought, maybe something I can play with my daughters. And I like a Merry Trash games, and I'm using a Merry Trash in a completely non-derogatory and simply descriptive neutral term as a style of game that has a lot of action, a lot of theme, and fairly massive production, as you can see here, and a healthy amount of randomness. At least these are some of the traits that I use to define a Merry Trash. In this sense, this game is definitely a Merry Trash. This is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players. All players control the heroes, the Ghostbusters. You go around, you kill the monsters react to what you do, and you see if you're able to win or lose the scenario based on what the conditions are. The game is also solo friendly, so you can play by yourself controlling all heroes. Without further ado, let me show you how the game works. The game is scenario based, so before you start playing, you choose a scenario. You have 16 scenario cards that form 4 campaigns of 4 scenarios each. In reality, you can play any scenario independently, or you can play the scenarios within a campaign in order to create an overarching story. Each scenario card has setup instructions. The game is played on a modular board. You have double-sided terrain tiles that are used to create the battlefield, and here you have setup instructions. On the other side, you have the description of the situation and then special rules, so what the gates do. These are the gates, they do different things in different scenarios. What happens at the end of a round in that scenario, that also changes, and then what you need to do to win, or what happens that causes you to lose the game. Also, you place a little clip here that indicates how much time you have in goo time before the mission is over, and usually you lose a mission if the timer goes down to 0. This is how the game will look like if you're playing this scenario here. I try to set it up as faithfully as possible. Here you see the 4 Ghostbusters, our heroes. The game is cooperative and the 4 of them are always in play. So if you're playing with less than 4 players, you assign more than 1 to some players. Each Ghostbuster comes with a card, such as this one. Here there is an experience track. You will go up as you kill monsters, you investigate goo piles, we'll see what those are, and by leveling up you unlock new abilities. Also, each Ghostbuster is represented by 2 separate miniatures, one with the guy holding the proton stream and one with the same person holding the slime blaster. Basically, these weapons work pretty much the same, but they target different types of monsters. This one targets the phlegms or phlasm, and the proton stream targets ghosts. Then you also have haunted citizens that can be attacked by either. And the characters, as you can see, are coded by color. So this is the character that is coded using purple, because in fact, when they are on the board, it may be kind of hard to tell them apart. Then we have the monsters. Really detailed, impressive, gorgeous miniatures. A lot of detail, very atmospheric, very neat miniatures. And some are pretty impressive. Pretty impressive and mean looking. As you can see from the setup, I placed these discs under some of them, but not all of them. These discs will simply give the enemies different abilities. So depending on the instructions, you may add some of these bases to the monsters, which makes them behave in different ways, gives them different abilities. So you have a lot of variety. This monster will behave differently if it is by itself, or if it has this base here, the green base, or a different type of base. Each type of monster also comes with a card that tells you What is the number to hit? If you roll that on a 6-sided die and you roll the number higher, then you hit the monster and you add a stream. Pretty much you place one of these tokens under the monster. Also, each Ghostbuster has a different one, a different type, and they are also color-coded, so that later you know who contributed to defeat that monster. That's again, this monster can be hit by proton streams. Other monsters can be hidden by goo, by slime, in which case you use the other side of this token here. So each monster has a number to hit. You roll the number of higher, you add 1. Each has a number of streams that you need to hit the monster with to trap it or to extract it. That's the same thing. It just means to destroy. The slime type, this is the type of damage that they give you when they slime you. That is their main attack. And each type of slime has different effects. It may reduce line of sight, may reduce your maneuvers, which are special actions, may reduce your normal actions, may give you hits, different type of things. Then we have also effects that happen when the monster is hit. Hitting a monster does not just add a stream or a slime, also activates them in certain ways, and then other monster. And then also there may be actions that happen when the monster is missed. So every time that you attack the monster, whether you hit or miss, the monster will do something. As you can see, the actions and reactions of the monsters, as you can see just from the templates, are different. They do behave in different ways. And that is interesting to me because the monsters are particularly reactive and active during your turn, not just at the end of your turn. It isn't just character's phase and then monster phase. The monsters do a lot of stuff during the player's turn. Now, during the player's main turn, the players will take their actions. Each player, or should say each character, because again you can assign a player multiple characters, each character has each turn 3 actions and 2 maneuvers. Yes, this is kind of confusing. And sometimes you can trade an action for a maneuver, but usually they are separated. Main actions are to move, so you can move your active Ghostbuster up to 2 spaces. You can drive when you get, and a maneuver, this is a free action, is to get in the car. Since you cannot stand very well on the miniature of the car, then you have a template here and you place your guy there. And then you can move for an action, you can move the car by 6 spaces. I didn't count, I hope that's kind of like sort of around 6. Let's move a little bit closer. So for an action we can move, we can also move diagonally, hooray. We can drive, we can deposit, that is, we can deposit, trap the monsters in the car, and the same we can do for the plasm, which again, this is the still prototype. There's different type of gooey monster. We can remove slime. Remember, monsters will give you slime. When I said actually they give you hits, what I meant is that now you have a penalty on the number to hit. So when you have some of these on your card, there are 2 ways of removing them. You may spend your entire turn removing one of them, super annoying. Or a pal can help in this. It's a game that does incentivize, does give an incentive to play cooperatively, because then if you're adjacent to a friend, you can use an action to remove slime from them. Same thing also, you can help them switch their weapons. So now this guy wants to use the proton stream instead, no, actually the proton stream instead of slime blaster. He could spend his entire turn just doing so. I think I got the wrong miniature. Here we go. He could spend the entire turn, instead of doing actions, changing weapon, and so you change the miniature, or a friend that is adjacent can spend an action to do that, to help them switch out their pack. Also, you can attack, hooray! Attacking is super complicated. Prepare yourself to be mind blown. Ready? Ready to take notes? You roll a die. And if you're, and this means 6, this logo here means 6, and if you rolled equal to or higher than the target of the enemy, which would be that one, if you're attacking that monster, you score a hit, and you add a stream or a slime as appropriate. And that's it. That's combat. That's pretty much combat. Again, there is the fun that then the monster will immediately activate and do something whether you hit it or not. For example, suppose that I hit that guy, now the guy moves one space towards my character, and the enemies will slime my characters when they have an ability that lets them do so, or when, because of movement, they move through my character, then plop, they soak my character in slime. We talked about also some other actions, which are maneuvers, and those are pretty much getting into the car, transfer equipment from one player to the other, and a very important maneuver is to interact with the goo pile. The goo pile will have equipment cards and event cards. Each scenario will tell you what exactly goes in the goo pile, how many equipment cards, how many event cards. You will prepare a deck accordingly, and then you'll draw from a goo pile. You first prepare a goo deck that tells you how many events and how many equipments you have. Then basically you draw from the goo deck and you say, oh, it's an event, so we're gonna get an event. That event is so excited. Maybe a poltergeist controlling that event flew in the screen. Or maybe from the goo pile, you draw an equipment card that tells you I'm gonna draw an equipment card. It reminds me of the passage in Parks and Recreations about the cones of Dancha. You roll dice to see how many dice you roll. So basically you draw a card to see what card you draw. And then the goo pile counts as exhausted. You also gain 1 point, 1 experience point for exploring a goo pile. These gates, they may be open like you see them here, or sealed. There are pluses and minuses, really. Sometimes it's better if a gate is open. It's a little less dangerous. It all depends on the effects. And you can also attack the gates, and the scenario card will tell you the number to hit in order that you need to roll in order to attack a gate, and how many hits you need to close the gate. Oh, here you see Lady Liberty, which of course is just the best piece in the game. In some of the scenarios, Lady Liberty is there. She has been possessed by evil entities and she will move around. In some of the scenarios, you can even drive Lady Liberty, which is just insanely cool. These are pretty much the basics. So during your turn, pretty much most of what you will do with your guys will be to move around, to attack. Of course, there will be line of sight. It just so happens this scenario doesn't have many barriers around, but there are a lot of other tiles that will give you barriers that you cannot move through or look through. Other barriers, such as this one, you can move through, but you cannot see through. Then there are orange lines, which is the other way around. You can see through, but not move through. So you may have a little bit of tactical complexity there. It just so happens this scenario is pretty open. But most of what you will do will be to move around, really fire, and move, fire and move. From time to time, you'll move the car, especially if that is one of the objectives, to bring it somewhere. You will then use your special abilities. You may use equipment, but equipment is a one-time thing. So it's not that changes gameplay dramatically. You will use your special abilities, but really most of what you can expect that you will be doing is move up to 2 spaces per action, and roll a 6-sided die. That is the heart of the game. At the end of the turn, after the old Ghostbusters have acted, then you will resolve all end of turn effects. They may come from many sources, monsters, scenario cards, etc. And then you roll a die and you match the result with whatever the card tells you, whatever the scenario card. Basically, the scenario card will give different meaning to what happens. So, for example, I rolled a die at the end of a round. This gate has been selected by that random roll, and then something happens depending on whether this gate here specifically is open or closed. The spirit world is a little player aid, is a little tile, not that little, but it's a tile that you have on the side. You place a number of monsters there at the beginning of the scenario based on the scenario instructions, and from time to time the scenario instructions will tell you to spawn a monster out of a certain gate. Also, monsters will move randomly. There is this template here. You place it next to the board at the beginning of the game. You never change the orientation, and that simply tells you where random movement occurs. For example, if a monster spawns in a random space adjacent to a gate, then you roll the 8-sided die, and in this case would be that direction. For example, if you're spawning a monster from that tile there, then we place it there, because that is the direction indicated by that template. There's the general idea. Take your 3 actions and or 2 maneuvers, move a lot, fire a lot, see what the monsters do, repeat until you lose or win the game based on the instructions in the scenario. This is a game with a lot of pluses and minuses. Figuring out the average may be a little bit tough. On the plus side, the components are really great. If you're a miniature wargamer, you could almost use these components just to create your own rules and have your own Ghostbusters skirmishes. Probably there are a set of rules out there. Just for the toy value, these components are really nice, especially the miniatures. Of course, this is a game, not a toy set, so we also want to see how the game works. And here's when we start having some problems. So the first of which is when we try to learn the game. It's not a complex game at the core, when we're talking about its core engine, but it is tough to learn because the rulebook is really messy. The rulebook, things appear to be out of order, not where you expect them to be. So it's very hard to absorb the information and what you need to learn. Then I heard somewhere that there was an FAQ document online, you know, answering some questions and clarifying. I looked for it, I opened the document, 45 pages. What? I'm not gonna read 45 pages of FAQs and clarifications. I guess that when I encounter a problem, I'll just make it up. I mean, I'll make an educated guess and I'll make a judgment call. Because this is not, say, an historical game, well, I'm learning all of these things, I'm going through all these procedures, but then I'm gaining a really deep appreciation. So accuracy is very important to me because I'm trying to understand an historical topic. If my Ghostbuster adventures are going to be slightly different from what the designer originally thought, then so be it. And especially if then the designer and the developers had figured out a way of conveying gameplay, it'd be better. They also would have shown me that they cared, that I really played that way. So I just made up my mind by myself when I found some ambiguities or things that didn't necessarily seem to make sense as written. So the rules, again, there is this thing, take it as a light game, take it as a game that you will have to negotiate, you will have to figure things out as you go, either because things are unclear, you don't feel like sifting through all of the conversations online to solve this or that minor problem. And again, it's a game that you can take humorously. That was my impression, my initial impression. There's going to be Zombicide with more of a tongue-in-cheek element, with just a fun romp, so I didn't want it to be bogged down in too much tactical detail. However, here's the other problem. The tactical detail is simply not there. I want some. I don't want too much because again, it's humorous like game, but I want some interesting decisions, and I could not find any. You have a lot of small rules, fiddly circumstances, monsters work in different ways, modifiers and modifiers to those modifiers, and ways that the monsters work, etc., which would be great if the energy you invest to make all of these elements work together pays off in terms again of tactical complexity, tactical rewardness. That's not a word, is it? I want to have a reward in terms of like the tactical feel if I'm taking into account all of these elements. The problem here is that the basic tactics is extremely simple and extremely linear and extremely luck-based. Move and roll a 6-sided die. You roll a 1, too bad for you. Maybe there's a game effect, lets you re-roll, lets you modify that, and then you get a 1 again. It's really luck-based. And when around that thing that doesn't have any tactical depth, you have all of these other things that you like to learn and you go through, just to get through all that six-sided die and roll a 1 or a 2, and there's nothing else you can do to rectify that. That is disappointing to me. I guess what I'm trying to say is I would like the game to be a little more complex or less complex. If the game is about move and roll and see what you hit, then I like the game to be more streamlined, even with less detail, with less unique cases and circumstances, with one type of action instead of actions and maneuver. If the game is move, roll to attack, and see what happens, then I have the D&D board games that I like very much, Wrath of Ashar, The Long Cast, and Ravenloft, that to me really hit that sweet spot. They're so simple, so streamlined, and because of that, the theme then shines to the mechanics. I can pay attention to the progression because I'm not bogged down constantly by little rules and exceptions. Or if I have detailed rules, exceptions, different types of actions, monsters that behave in different ways, etc., then I want a system that allows me to create a strategy around that. Here I know that a monster will give a modifier, another monster will have another effect, etc., etc. But if at the end what I can do is roll a d6, I can't really factor that in. I can't really have a sophisticated strategy. Being close to each other when you want to support each other, spread out when you need to investigate those goo piles, it's fine, but these are pretty obvious things. And if you need to kill a monster that is sitting on a location where you need to go, you need to kill the monster that is sitting on that location. It doesn't seem to me that all of these extra rules that are around, all of the chrome, really pays off thematically or really increases the quality of gameplay, elevates the tactics that you have. And so I found myself with a game that is too complicated and too easy at the same time, or too complicated and too simple. Too simple because of the core idea, and too complicated because of all of the things that I need to enact and all the rules that I need to take into account when I get there. Now, I've been pretty disparaging about the game, but I have to say there are at least two ideas that I really, really like. And from the point of view of the design, I like them a lot. And probably because of that, I thought it was a pity that they were just submerged in all of this unnecessary fiddliness. One is the fact that the monsters react as you act. In so many cooperative games, you go, then the monsters go. And the situation feels a little static. Now you're frozen as the monsters slaughter you, and you're just looking at them walking in front of you and you can't do anything. Or the monsters are frozen as you go there and you slaughter them and it looks like they cannot do anything. You have that stop and motion situation. The fact that here the monsters will act a lot during your turn and may or may not act at the end of the turn, to me that gives a nice, really nice flow. I like that a lot. So instead of having this like abstract droid puzzle, you're going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then we just execute that perfunctorily. Well, I do this thing that we plan together, and now the monsters have done a lot of other stuff before the next player goes, and then that player does, and the situation changes again. I think this idea with a great potential. I don't remember seeing it in many other games. I want to see it in more games, especially games that are more streamlined and they have more a better pace, and they are just better produced, better developed. The production in terms of material components is great, better developed. The other design idea that I like very much is the fact that the heroes don't die. You don't have the thing, you don't have to count health points and a hero dies. And if you're playing with young players, that is really great. You don't have the emotional distress. I like the fact that it gives a cartoonish feel to it. Donald Duck should never die. Cartoonish characters should bounce, should take a lot of pain, but they don't die. And then, spring back into action. Maybe a little bit walking funny because they're hurting, but they should not die. This is a game that to me captures that cartoonish humorous comic book feel that I associate again with some old Disney cartoons, with Bugs Bunny and that kind of cartoons, which to me works in a story which is about people that are blasting slimy monsters with slime. Works perfectly well. And you can still lose the scenario, of course, but you lose the scenario because time runs out, because the monsters do something else. I like the fact that the victory conditions have been designed around different situations that may arise that do not involve characters dying. These are two great ideas. I really like them. I just wish that they weren't swimming in this quagmire of cases, exceptions, ambiguities, and rules that feel unnecessary and burdensome, that don't really seem to add much. And when you go through all of that learning process, you realize that you're rolling a die and hoping to roll more than 3 or more than 4. So, Ghostbusters, the board game 2. Fairly disappointing from the way the game looks. When you look at it, it looks great. The components look great. Gameplay is really underwhelming. I think there's potential, but it needs to basically be redeveloped, streamlined massively, cut out a lot when it comes to individual cases or circumstances, or add to what the players can do. In the former case, then you have a game which is more friendly for families, and then you can play with my daughters, and then you roll and try to roll a 3 and you destroy the monster. That's fun, if that's all we have to worry about. But I don't think I want to play with my 7-year-old daughter, even when she's going to be 8 or 9 or 10. It's just too much for what the game has to offer. Or you can refit it to make it more tactically rewarding. Then you're targeting hobby players mainly. As is, it's a game that kind of like falls between two audiences. It's too messy to be a pure family game. It's too simple and obvious and straightforward mechanically to be a real hobby game. And so it's just kind of like meh, kind of like a meh. And that's pretty much, I guess, summarizes when I put together all the pluses and the minuses, I come up with a meh.